We're ready?
Kinda.
So,
Ready as we're gonna be.
all right, so we're recording. So, all right. Good morning, everybody. I don't know if you can say happy Labor Day weekend or not, but it's a good 3-day weekend. Many of us will be at my house today, eating breakfast and worshiping together. But we thought we'd put like one short devotional together to go online, and so Chris and Esther have graciously recorded this, and this is what you're going to be watching. So I just want to talk just a few minutes about some things. I think that Labor Day weekend, thinking about labor, sometimes we don't really want to talk about it, but Jesus, when he's talking to the disciples, at one point the disciples are walking down the road, and they're an amazing group, and they begin to argue about who was the greatest among them, among the 12, like who was the greatest among them. And Jesus asked them, like, what were you guys talking about back there? And of course, they were smart enough to know we're not going to tell him. And then he knew, and he just set an example of like, come and grabbed a little child and said, if you really want to be great in the kingdom, you got to become like this little child. Or he said also that if you want to be great, you become a servant of all. And in our culture, in our language today, that doesn't sound like an attractive way to go about life. But that's the paradox of the kingdom, is what culture normally would tell us is great. The kingdom is going to have a reverse view of that. So Jesus himself talks about, hey, if you want to be great, if you want to do great things, become a servant. So I think that we want to talk about that a little bit today. And I'm going to share a parable that he shares. And in Luke 17, I'll start with verse 6. He's given a whole list of sermons here. And then he says here, 17:7, suppose one of you has a servant and he's plowing or he's looking after sheep. Will he say to that servant when he comes in from the field, come along now and sit down and eat? Won't he rather say, prepare my supper, get yourself ready, wait on me while I eat and drink? After that you may eat and drink. Will he thank that servant because he did what he was told to do? So you also, when you have done everything you were told to do, should say, we are unworthy servants, we have only done our duty. And again, he's speaking to the 12, he's speaking to a crowd, but he's saying, the servant, the master doesn't necessarily thank him for a job well done, thank him for serving him, because that's his job, that's his task, that's what he's about. And he looks at us and then says, this is what your attitude should be. So often in life, we're after things about, what do I get out of this? What is the payoff on this? Even in the church, it's like, how am I going to do? If I give this, I get blessings. If I say this, I get a blessing. But what about we're just doing what we are told to do? Jesus says that we're to love our neighbor as ourselves. Why do I think I should get thanked if I do something well to love my neighbor as myself? Yesterday, our neighbor behind us is a widow, recently widowed, and I went back and had my mower out and noticed she was pushing the lawn, so I went back and mowed the lawn. I don't tell you that so that someone can think, man, he's not a nice guy. I want to love my neighbor well, and I don't need her to even acknowledge it. If I'm looking to be acknowledged, I've already kind of lost the prize. So Jesus is talking to the guys there, and he said, well, this is what life is like, that you don't expect everybody to applaud. Don't expect everybody to congratulate you, because this is why you are called. This is what you do. And so our response is, well, we're only unworthy servants. We're only this or that. We have only done our duty. And so I think, when Jesus is in John getting ready to head to the cross, he has that moment where he goes into the upper room with the guys, and they do what we call communion today. But before he does that, what does he do? He strips down, puts a towel around his waist, and he starts washing the disciples' feet. And the disciples are like, a couple of them get in line. if they had listened to this parable, they would have been the ones washing feet. But they were there wondering, well, there's nobody washing feet, so we might as well go ahead. Jesus begins to wash feet. Peter begins to stop him, like, we're not going to do that. And he goes through all of this stuff. But when he gets done, he says, do you understand what I've done for you? If your leader has humbled himself to be a servant, then you model that. And again, as he's had these discussions with them, want to be great in the kingdom, wanting to sit at his left and his right, he's saying, you know what, this is a different kingdom we're a part of. And your leader has just now took the lowest servant role of washing your feet. And you need to do this likewise. And he's not just talking about washing feet, but he's really talking about, will we take that lower position? He warns in another parable, like I think in Luke here, he talks about it like, you know what, you guys all go ahead for the best seats. But if somebody more important than you comes in, they're going to have you move to the back row and you're going to be embarrassed. He said, take the back row seat. And if they see you and they think you're more important, they will move you up. But again, our culture is teaching us to do this better, to go after the front seat. And again, this backward kingdom that Jesus talks about is about servanthood. It's about, being a servant to all, being willing to take the lowest role. Again, Paul does such a great job in Philippians 2, where he talks about Jesus. And it's really considered to be a hymn in Philippians 2, where he begins and he says, Jesus emptied himself of everything. He emptied himself out and became a servant, even unto death. And very few of us are going to be called to be a servant unto death. But it depends on how you look at it, because much of what we do would be called to be a servant unto the death of our own flesh. I spoke this past Sunday about, Paul says we clothe ourselves. You take off the old flesh, you put on the new, which is covered with humility and patience and kindness. Stuff that we don't maybe normally have, but I clothe myself with that. I clothe myself with the idea of being a servant over being served. I can remember, back early days of being in a large church, and we would bring important, big speakers in, and we were taught to serve them. And, it was like, man, it was an honor to carry his Bible. You couldn't really talk to him because of this or that. And overall, we should honor them. But their task really was to come in and serve the church, not us to serve them. I view being a pastor as not, I have a group of people that serve me, but my role is how do I serve the church? How do I serve those that show up? How do I serve those here? A shepherd is, kind of that way. So this Labor Day weekend, I know for some people there'll be a lot of stuff tied to that, but it's just a reminder that we're about doing good things. We're about doing good works. Ephesians, Paul writes that God has prepared for us things in advance to do. But we have to kind of have that mindset of Jesus, of one, I'm going to be a servant. Of two, I want to look and see what the Father's doing. I want to hear what he's saying, and I want to join that. And at the end of the day, then, we'll only have this common set of, I've only done what I was supposed to do. I've only done what my task was in front of me. So on this day, whenever you're watching this, just encourage you to say, take the role of a servant, take the role of humility, and let God put you in the spaces you need you to be. It's much more easy for him to move you around if you're saying to him, he said, here's my hands, I will serve you with them. One last thought as I was just finishing up. The first miracle that John records is Jesus turning water into wine. And that's a controversial thing for much of the church. Much of the church wants to argue over whether it was alcoholic or not. And I was like, that's a silly thing. But there's a one line, and again, I love one-liners, where he has them fill the water jugs, He tells the servant, go serve this to the master of the ceremonies. Now, I can't imagine what the servant is thinking. Like, I'm going to go give this guy a drink out of a wash basin. My career as a servant may be over. But as he delivers it, he hears the words of the master saying, whoa, this is the best. But there's a key line in there where it says, nobody else knew what happened, but the servants knew. The servants knew the miracle that had just happened. I just hang on to that. I remember John Wimber, I stole this from John Wimber's sermon years and years ago, but I love that line, the servants knew. I think it'd be good for the church to take that role, take that position, and understand we are going to see things that others are going to miss if we have the role of a servant. And so I pray for you. Father, I pray over my friends this morning. We would just humble ourselves to be servants. We would not be looking for titles and positions, but the position of a servant. Because I believe in that humble state, we will see those things we long to see. We will experience things that others are going to miss because we've taken a lower role, we've taken a lower place to see what you're doing in the higher places. So I bless my friends that have watched this, and thank you for this opportunity. Bless you. I just think it's so great being called your child. And I bless all those that watch in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for watching, and no commercials. Bye, everybody.